Hey everybody, welcome back to the Sixer Sense podcast. I'm your host Lucas with Chris. Chris, it's been a while. I missed you, buddy. Hope
It has
vacation was
been.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been at the beach for a week. May or may not be getting sick, but I'm back and ready to talk about some Sixers basketball. We're about 10, 11 days out from the draft here as of this recording, Lucas. A lot to talk about over this past week that we've missed out on that we can catch up on right here. Starting with the fact that Philly has been officially linked to Dylan Harper and the number 2 overall pick. According to Hoops Hype's Michael Scotto, Philly and San Antonio have engaged in conversations about trading the number 2 pick to Philadelphia in what would presumably involve, obviously, the number 3 pick and probably future picks. How you feeling about that, Lucas? I know we've kind of talked about Harper as like the ideal dream candidate in certain situations here. I don't think any of us have really thought of trading up as a viable option until now.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about this possibility picking up real steam?
Well, I think that if you're San Antonio, San Antonio does unique things in the draft. I mean, I go back to when they traded George Hill, who was almost supplanted Tony Parker in the rotation for Kawhi Leonard, who was basically a power forward that couldn't shoot. So going for the best prospect might not be like the highest rated person there. If they're not sold on Dylan Harper, and look, you do. I mean, I would take him if I was them, but like you do already have Stephon Castle, you do have De'Aaron Fox, so you don't need any more quote unquote ball handlers. You need to have defenders. Not saying that Dylan Harper can't defend, and you need to have 3-point shooters. Yet again, can't say that he can't do that, but he's more of an on-ball person, right? He needs to have the ball in his hands to succeed, right? So that in mind, what would that package be? You talked about it, number 3 pick, multiple other picks. I think if you offer, the 30th and the 32nd pick, you'd be in pretty good category. You're not giving up that Clippers pick, which I'm holding on to dear life for. And, those 2 picks, like, if this works out, then those 2 picks won't be nearly as consequential, right? And, I think about Dylan Harper. You put him next to Maxey, and you basically have Max, the inverse of what you have with Detroit currently. Detroit, Cade Cunningham is the star. Jaden Ivey's the up-and-coming guy. Maxey would be a souped-up, Jaden Ivey to the extreme. Jaden Ivey can only hope that he can get to Tyrese Maxey's level. And then, you would have Dylan Harper, who's 6'6", so kind of, only an inch shorter than Cade Cunningham, I think. So, and he would be the developing guy. But, we've said all along that Tyrese Maxey is not a primary point guard. That's not his, running an offense is not his best talent. So having having the opportunity to put him off the ball with a primary ball handler, because McCain's good, but he's not a primary ball handler either, not yet anyway. And it's the same thing with Quentin Grimes. He's okay, but he's definitely not a primary ball handler. And here's the thing. With Harper, you could get away with playing, Grimes or McCain along in the starting lineup along with him and Maxey. You could get away with it. I don't know if you would want to, but that opportunity presents itself too. But I think the 3rd overall pick, at least one other first. Probably they'll probably ask for more than one, 2 other first, possibly maybe a lottery protected 2nd first. But that, I think that would be a fair trade. Does that get the deal done? I don't know, but that is what I think would be a fair trade.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I don't want to sell the farm to move up for Harper. I think he's a super special prospect, but there's obviously a line you have to draw in the sand.
And I also think that, they'll take whoever they want to take it, but if they can get extra assets to move back one spot and still be able to take that person, they will.
Yeah, I think this is a general idea, though, that could benefit both sides. We've talked about going best prospect available. I think that's generally the right strategy, especially this high in the draft. Spurs should absolutely take Harper if they stay at 2. But if there's one team, like you said, where he doesn't really fit that well, it's probably San Antonio right now.
Mm-hmm.
Harper's like not a great shooter. Like he can shoot, but he's not very efficient yet. He really doesn't hit pull up
He does
threes.
remind me of Cade Cunningham a lot, right? Like he does have that type of body of work, that size, that type of skill set coming into the league. Cade wasn't
Yeah,
a great shooter coming in.
I think Cade was a better shooter, like pretty substantially, especially as like a pull up guy. Harper really doesn't have that in his bag yet, and really neither do Fox. Like Fox is their best shooter by a mile. He's not a real high volume catch and shoot guy. Castle's
Yeah.
really not much of a shooter yet, below 30%
I
last
mean, they
year.
still got Devin Vassell, so
So yeah,
yeah.
but shooting has been a real weakness for San Antonio, and Harper obviously does not help in that department, and he's a guy who will need shooting around him.
I can't
Like
remember if it was last time or the time before, but somebody on this podcast, I don't know if it was you or Michael, but talked me into VJ Edgecombe being a Spurs guy,
yeah,
and I could see that.
I agree. I think that would make a lot of sense for them. I think Knipple would make a lot of sense for them for obvious reasons. I think
You
he's
are so
definitely a
high on
Spurs
Knipple.
guy.
I don't think he's a top 4 guy. I don't even know if he's a top 5 guy. He's a top 10 guy, but I don't.
I think he is. He's getting some top 5 buzz.
I
I
mean,
think it's,
yeah, I saw that he was one of the 4 players that the Sixers worked out or going to work out.
yeah. So I mean, it's definitely possible. I think he fits kind of the Spurs mold in terms of just smart players with some skill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like I don't think anyone is arguing with the benefits of having multiple ball handlers. I think that's a smart way to build your team out. But the difference between what Philly has going on in the backcourt and San Antonio is that McCain and Max are elite shooters. And I think that's really a great fit for Harper because you have multiple guys who can create and kind of ease pressure off of him while also spacing the floor for him. Like Maxie's best hoops came with James Harden
Mm-hmm.
setting him up. I think you can kind of maybe see a similar relationship developing with Harper.
Yeah.
There have been a lot of Harden comps for Harper. I don't know if I don't want to set the bar too high. He obviously has a long way to go before he's that level of all around scorer, but physically, in terms of play style getting downhill, there are some obvious parallels. We know that Daryl Morey loves him, loves James Harden. Maybe not
Mm-hmm.
now, but like the idea and the player, he obviously had a great affection for. So if he sees any James Harden and Dylan Harper, it's not hard to see why Daryl
Mm-hmm.
Morey might want to get in on that.
I guess my question
So
is, how much would you be willing to give up for that second pick?
I'd be willing to give up probably a couple future first round picks in addition to
When you say a
3.
couple, 2, 3, 4, like what are we saying?
I don't want to empty the
So
entire clip.
the
I'm
third
definitely
pick
not.
plus two other picks.
Yeah, I think
Okay,
that's
yeah,
fair.
yeah, I think that's fair too.
That's probably the top. I
I would
obviously,
prefer just 1 and 1.
yeah.
The third pick and one other one.
I've
Maybe
seen
it's
people mention McCain. You're not giving up
yeah.
McCain.
No, you're not doing that.
If they want Justin Edwards, fine. That's acceptable. That kind of maybe a few of the younger guys, but not McCain. But yeah, I mean, look, Harper's really good. I think he's the consensus number 2 guy in this draft for a reason. I really think he's a great fit for what Philly needs. I think he brings a really interesting dynamic to this offense. So I'd be willing to give up a good amount. There's obviously risk. I don't think the board ever really falls exactly like we expect it to 5-10 years down the
Well,
line.
I think I think it's safe to say that Cooper Flag is still going to be the best player from this draft.
I would bet on that strongly. I there's definitely a world in which Harper is not the second best guy. Like
Oh
there
yeah.
is a range of outcomes there, but I think the fit's really strong. I think it's worth the swing. I
Mm-hmm.
think he's really like
Look,
the
you're
perfect
not going to
guy.
get another chance at the apple like this again unless you get lottery gut luck again.
No, and we know Daryl likes to go star hunting, but he wants to keep the roster young. This is really the best path to
I mean, you look
accomplishing
at the
that.
teams
That's
in the
like,
NBA Finals; they're both young rosters. So
yeah, it's a big swing, but I think it could really benefit really both teams. I think the Spurs would make the best out of an Edgecombe or a Knipple situation.
you
Um,
really just don't see them going for Bailey.
no, I don't either. Not sure I see Philly going with Bailey, so we'll talk about that. The general belief, Lucas, from according to Scotto, is that Philadelphia, if they stay at 3, has zeroed in on 4 prospects. VJ Edgecombe reportedly worked out for Philly, had a really good workout, really good interview, ate dinner with all the Sixers brass and Tyrese Maxey. He seems to have kind of overtaken Bailey as the favorite in Philly right now. Would you say
Mhm.
that's fair?
I think that is how it is being portrayed in the media. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Look,
Look,
we don't know for sure what's going on in there. Edgecombe, we've talked about the pros with him. Super athletic, really good defensively. The floor for him, I see is KCP, Kentavious Caldwell Pope. The ceiling, maybe not Anthony Edwards, but like maybe Victor Oladipo. You
yeah.
know, I think
Yeah.
that's that. I think that's your range, KCP to Victor Oladipo, which is a pretty good range. I mean, look, I don't think that's bad. I still think when you think of Ace Bailey, you think of a guy that has even higher upside than that. But like, I get, you know, Edgecombe is the safe pick here, right? Edgecombe is like you have at least a really good role player if it does not work out. But if it does work out, you get a 2-time All-Star maybe, which is good, which is really good. So like,
Yeah.
look,
I mean, look, I would even maybe go further than that. Like, I think he's like one of the best athletes in the NBA on day one. Like, he's a really impressive player.
mhm.
Has a long way to go offensively, but like, I think there are some pretty clear physical parallels to someone like Donovan Mitchell, who was not very well rounded when he got to the NBA. It really took off because he has all of this like strength and functional athleticism getting downhill.
Mm-hmm.
Edgecombe has a lot of that. He draws fouls. He creates his own dunks. Like, there's some real upside there. Bailey has a huge ceiling, but it's gonna take a lot
The
more for
floor is
him to reach
lower
it.
with Bailey too. I get that, and we mentioned. I think I saw. So somebody tweeted out like the shuttle speeds for four prospects. That the Sixers were looking at. Knuppel, and I think Trey Johnson was the other one, besides Bailey and Edgecombe. Trey Johnson, I'll be honest, I'm not high on. I see him as Buddy Hield. I really just see him as a slightly more athletic Buddy Hield. Not worth a top 3 pick in my opinion. Then Knuppel, I like him. I just don't love him. Like not at the 3rd pick. If we were picking at 6, fantastic. Would love to take him, but I don't see him as the number 3 pick. That's just me though.
Yeah, I mean, like I think putting too much stock into combine measurements is a slippery slope. But like Knippel did out jump Flag Bailey. I think Edgecombe, like, he performed really well. I think well above expectations in those areas. Do I think that he's a better leaper athlete than Edgecombe? Of course not. But I do think there's like some underrated upside with Knippel, a guy who's just that good at 19 years old. And there's
I
all
mean, I
these,
can see him being like a Gordon Hayward esque type level
yeah,
player,
which is
which is
a really good
fine.
outcome.
Yeah,
Like, so, yeah, I obviously the fit would be really strong too. Like, I think Knippel would help the Sixers win games next season. So, has it been confirmed that Johnson and Knippel are the other two?
I don't
That
know. Like I said, I forgot who tweeted it. I think you don't Keith Pompey. If I get this wrong, please don't get mad at me. But I think it was Keith that tweeted like those 2 other players, shuttle speeds next to Bailey and Edgecombs.
okay?
And I don't think Keith would do that without reason. Now I could be wrong,
Yeah,
and I could look it up if I really wanted to. How about that? You can expound on that for a minute while I'll look it up because it was in my notification tweets.
yeah. I mean, like, I think it doesn't take a lot of reading between the lines to think that Knuppel is one of the other 2 mystery guys after Edgecombe and Bailey. I think that's pretty obvious. The 4th guy being Johnson, I think, is also like would not be a surprise. There's been a lot of Trey Johnson Sixers talk. I think the fit is pretty obvious. Most folks are higher than us on him. Like, a lot of people have Johnson as the 5th or 6th guy on their board. Crazy talented shooter, one of the best scorers in college basketball as a freshman. Obvious fit offensively for what Philly needs. The defense is a work in progress, but if you put him with guys like Grimes, MPG, and Embiid, you can probably cover some of those weaknesses. And just putting a crazy good shooter next to Joel always has its merits. So it would not shock me if Trey Johnson and Knippel are the other 2. I think Maluach is like the only other guy who's really been connected to Philly at this point, and I think we all have a bit of a tough time believing that that's the route they're going to take. though I do think there's like a chance Maluach goes higher than folks expect just because of he's generating a lot of positive buzz on like
I
the
mean,
intangibles
people
front.
liked how he performed in the Olympics against Joel. Look, I mean, Charlotte's not set with Mark Williams. They were ready to trade him. So, like, that might be a destination.
Yeah.
Utah has not been in, like, if they loved Walker Kessler, he would have been starting the whole season. That did not happen. Washington, Alex Sarr could play power forward if they really wanted to go double big. So,
No,
like,
yeah.
that, yeah.
I think Washington is where you really have to start looking at Maluach. I think that's a real possibility.
I think Charlotte is too. I would not rule it out.
I wouldn't rule it out. It seems like Charlotte is definitely going to take Edgecombe if he's there. If he's not
there,
there,
yeah.
if he's not there, I think they could zag. I haven't released like my final mock yet.
Mm-hmm.
I could really see Charlotte being a Knipple team just because they need guys who are smart.
I think they're an Ace Bailey team if he's there.
Maybe, but like I really think Knipple will be the smarter pick just based on where they're at as a team. Like they need guys who can make good decisions with the basketball.
And I get that they need smart players, but has the new front office proven that they have been able to do that yet? I mean, look at their first pick.
True, but I could see a world in which they look at last year's pick, see that it maybe was not the right route and course correct and take a guy like maybe they just take Ace Bailey. It's definitely possible. It would be a very Hornets thing to do. I wouldn't have a ton of confidence in that being the best pick, but if Knipple's there at 5, I think Utah's a threat. I think Washington could take him. I don't think Knipple's getting past like New Orleans at 7. I would say that's his floor right now.
No, for
Do you
sure.
agree?
Yeah, that's fair. That is more than fair.
Yeah. All right.
So I do want to mention something before we move on, and I know this is not our very next topic, but it is the topic after this, and it is about Kevin Durant. I don't think that's our next topic, is it? No, it's not. It's the last topic. So I do want to note that about 3 minutes ago, Shams tweeted out that Miami, San Antonio, and Houston are Kevin Durant's preferred destinations out of Phoenix. So yes,
noted.
I know it was Minnesota was the talk last night, but it is not Minnesota. It is San Antonio, Miami, Houston. I see him more of a natural fit in Miami and Houston. It depends on what he wants. If he wants to be the go-to guy, then Miami's the best choice, right? Houston is if he wants to win. I don't think San Antonio is ready to win yet.
Yeah. Let's save that for the end.
Yeah, but we'll get there.
We'll dive into
I just wanted to, I just saw the tweet, so I wanted to share that.
Yeah, that is good fodder for what we will talk about later. All right, let's talk quickly though about Ace Bailey.
Mm-hmm.
Who, according to Kevin O'Connor of Yahoo, is being aggressively, quote unquote, targeted by the New Orleans Pelicans and new president of basketball operations, Joe Dumars. We've talked about the possibility of Philly trading back. The reporting from Scotto and others seems to be that Philly is either going to keep the pick or trade up. But, Lucas, do you think they should still consider trading back? And how do you feel about a package along the lines of Herb Jones and number 7 for Kelly Oubre and number 3? That is a hypothetical that has been thrown around ad nauseum on Sixers Twitter.
I don't love it.
The logical kind of framework for that sort of deal.
I don't love it.
You don't love it?
I don't love it. I mean, it's a talking point, but I think I need more. Like, I like Herb Jones, but injury history is an issue there, right? Not like we don't have other guys that have injury history. And like we're giving up Kelly, who is not only a fan favorite, but you could argue, the second best player consistently on the Sixers last year, which is not a great look, but it's an argument that could be made.
Yeah.
I say no to this trade. I don't think it's enough. Now, if you said trade Murphy and 7th for Kelly Oubre,
Pelicans are doing
that. Then I hang up the phone and say, "Have a good day."
Sure, that's that's fair. It obviously depends on like how you view the board. in this top 7 range. Like, you know me, I have guys who are probably going to go in the 7 to 14 range, ranked higher than a few guys who might go in the 3, 4, 5 range.
Yeah.
So if you're telling me I can trade back to 7 and get Colin Murray Boyles or Noah Osongwe or even Knipple, then I think that's like great value because I would be fine with all those guys at 3. And you get Herb Jones, who I think
See,
is
I guess that's just how we see the
substantial
board.
upgrade,
I
right? Like,
can't. I'm sorry. None of
Herb
those
is,
guys are gonna be. None of those guys are gonna be franchise changers. At 3, I have a chance to get a franchise changer.
I think those guys could be franchise changers, which is where we
No,
differ.
no,
Like,
no.
I mean, look, I
I think
Herb is
that
really good.
Florida sun's got into your brain a little bit there, sir.
Maybe, but like Herb Jones is also like
I
not
get that
a
he's elite
scrub.
defensively. I'm not saying like he's like the second coming of Tayshaun Prince. I'm not saying that he's bad.
He's an all defense guy.
I'm just saying like first off, there is injury history to consider with him. Secondly, I'm not quite as high on like outside of Colin Murray's Boyle, which I even then like I don't think he's like look, you're not going to get very many bites at the apple on number 3 pick, especially when you have guys like Tyrese Maxey and Jared McCain on your roster. So you might as well. I just no, I can't. I'm sorry.
That's fair. I think a lot of people probably agree with you. Frankly, it seems like the Sixers probably agree with you based on where the reporting is at. But if New Orleans is willing to throw more into that package, I think it definitely becomes a conversation. Obviously, it depends on how much they want Ace Bailey. I think the more realistic scenario is that Philly takes Edgecombe at 3, and then Charlotte is the team trading back, or Utah if Bailey gets to that point. That might be a bit more doable for all
I could see
parties.
Charlotte trading back. I could see Utah trading back.
Yeah.
I do want to note that, and I'm surprised you don't have it on here. Utah is taking calls for Lowry Marketing.
Yeah, I saw that. I don't know if Philly is a marketing team, but
I mean, I know at least one friend of mine, Ben. He does NBA now and then with me. Ben would love to swap in Paul George for Lowry Marketing. I would not.
yeah, I wonder. I'm skeptical that Utah
Really
views
wants to
moving up 2
trade
spots.
Lowry.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the move for them. I think they maybe take a top 5 pick and whatever they can get back from marketing. Maybe they get a second lottery pick, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think Lowry is still a very good player.
Yeah,
I think he would look really good
I just
in like a winning context. But
look, we talked about it. Paul George was injured and playing out of position last year. It was not a good year for him. Let's give it one more year before we give up on him.
yeah, I tend to agree. I don't think we're at the point where Markkanen is just categorically better than Paul George.
Yeah.
Younger, better
Sure.
contract, sure. But look, if it's Markkanen in the 5th pick for 3, then I'll talk about it. I just don't think that's going to be the package. And if it's a lot
If
of
it
future
is,
picks,
I mean, then you got to consider it. But like,
yeah, if it's like they want other picks and they want or they want McCain or they want Edwards and Bona, then I'm a bit more skeptical,
No.
All right, Lucas, you ready to talk about this Kevin Durant thing?
Yeah, so we have to update the agenda because, yeah, well, go ahead and do the whoosh.
Well,
there we go.
Let's lay it out here.
So, so Shams just tweeted out. So last night, just to give recap, Shams said that Minnesota, Miami, and Houston were the focuses for Kevin Durant. Shams tweeted out, a couple minutes ago saying that Miami, San Antonio, and the Rockets are Durant's preferred destinations out of Phoenix. Those across the NBA have been made aware in recent days that those are the 3 teams Durant would commit to long term. So first off, Sixers are out of that, so that doesn't really impact us, but it could impact us via the draft. Let's talk about that first, shall we?
Well, I do. Well, sure. Yeah. I mean, it is like worth noting that just because Durant wants to go to those teams does not mean Phoenix actually has to send him there.
Of course not. No, they owe him nothing. He has not delivered anything.
If Minnesota wants to do the Toronto Kawhi Leonard thing and just give KD a 1-year trial run, And like KD doesn't have like a Los Angeles Clippers hometown situation to run back to. He might be worth a shot.
And honestly, depending on what happened with your Thunder, maybe the Thunder come out of left field.
Yeah.
So if they lose, they need another scorer.
Yeah, and look, John Gambadoro, Suns Insider mentioned obviously the Spurs, who are always going to be in the mix. He mentioned the Clippers and the Raptors. Toronto has been picking up a lot of steam as like a team that could make a big move.
The Raptors have a lot of assets. They could go for it.
We know Masai Ujiri has taken a risk on a older, really accomplished wing before on a 1-year contract, and it
Who would
worked
he
out
trade?
pretty
Could
well.
he even trade Brandon Ingram for him? Because
I
that
don't
would be
know,
like
but you
the
can trade
obvious trade.
Barrett, Pirtle, a few other contracts and picks and get there.
Okay.
You know, they have number 9. Like they have some assets. So
Yeah.
But let's say it's the Spurs, the Rockets, or the Heat. That seems probable at this point. As far as the draft goes, Heat have the 20th pick.
That doesn't impact us.
Spurs have the 14th pick. They're not trading
Spurs
number 2.
also have the second pick.
They're not trading number 2 for Kevin Durant.
Are we sure?
I'm absolutely positive. That would shock me. It would be malpractice. Houston has 10, which they would probably trade.
They did just also extend Steven Adams. Shout out to Steven Adams. 3 years,
awesome
39
player.
mil. Huh?
Awesome player.
Yes.
I think it's a good deal for all sides.
Yes.
Lucas,
tradable contract.
Where do you think KD fits best, and where do you think he ends up here? Like are those different teams for you?
I think there is different. Okay, it depends on what KD wants from life, right? And we talked about this, teased this a little bit beforehand. What does KD want? Does KD want to be the number one scorer on a team? Then Miami's the simple fit, right? You put together Terry Rozier, Andrew Wiggins, some picks, some young guys, probably Jovic and Jaime Jaquez. And you throw in some picks, and that probably gets the deal done, and that puts Phoenix in a pretty good spot too. You get that, or and then he's the number one guy, and you have really good number 2, number 3 guy with Bam and Tyler Hero. So like that could be like, and the East is going to be wide open next year. We don't really know who's going to win the East, right? A lot of variables there. So that could be an interesting spot if he wanted to be the guy. Technically, he would still be the leading scorer if he went to Houston. However, it would be much more of a collaborative team effort. He wouldn't probably have to score as much as he normally has, and maybe that would be an interesting fit. You definitely have. I think that would have to be a 3-team trade because you definitely want to give up Jalen Green, but you don't want to. Phoenix wouldn't want him. Phoenix, honestly, if I'm Phoenix, I'm focusing on Houston because they have my picks. I try to get my picks back if I'm Phoenix. Try to get as many as my picks back as possible. And if there's just picks and salary filler, then I still do it because guess what? I have my picks back. I can decide how I'm going to do this moving forward, right? But like that's in Houston, like I said, you could do salary filler or you can do young guys plus salary filler. It really doesn't matter. Let's just say you get Cam Whitmore. He's not getting a lot of minutes, but gosh, he's still a really good prospect, right? So like that's an interesting one. And then San Antonio, they're not a contender yet. And while KD would help raise their floor, the West is like outside of like who? Utah and maybe Utah and who? Like Utah's the only team that I know for sure is not going to be trying to win next year, or is not going to have a realistic shot of winning next year. And probably not Sacramento either, right? So that's like 2 teams in the West that are not going to be, and like Sacramento's still probably going to try to win. Pretty much every team in the West is trying to get into the playoffs this next year. I don't think of one team that's going to be rebuilding in the conventional sense. So like Miami would be like, if you want to have a wide open chance. Houston's probably like the KD away from being a true contender. And honestly, if you just want storylines and, like picture cameos, you go to Spurs to be the 2 lankiest players in the NBA. Wemby and Kevin Durant. Like, I think they would have to give up some rotational guys that matter, and KD would be relied on to be their scorer, like floor spacer, and that's the reason why he left OKC in the first place. So, like, there would have to be difference. I don't know. Your thoughts?
I definitely think Houston is like, if I have to make a prediction right now, I think it will be Houston because they have the best stuff to offer. They're the closest to being like a top tier contender. I think Houston makes the most sense for a lot of reasons.
Yeah. I would rank it Houston, Miami, San Antonio.
I think you are slightly overrating Miami. That just feels like a team that's sort of stalling a bit and on the decline. Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo are very good players. I don't know if Hero's your second offensive guy on a championship team, even in the East next year. Like, I don't know if that team's beating Indiana. I really don't. It's possible. Spoelstra's a great coach. The Heat are never gonna like just roll over and die with Pat Riley there. I definitely think it's possible that he ends up there. But really, they don't have the best stuff to offer.
No, they have the worst stuff to offer out of everybody.
I'm skeptical that they win the bidding war. Like San Antonio, straight up, Wemby's the best player that you could pair Durant with.
But they're so far away still.
I don't think they probably would have been in the playoffs this year if Wemby and Fox didn't get hurt. Like, I think they're closer than you're giving them credit for. Wemby's a top 10 guy already. Fox is really good as like a number 2. They have the rookie of the year, Castle, who's going to get better. You put Durant there, I think that team is winning plenty of games. Like, I think that's a real team, and obviously the age graph is a little skewed with a bunch of young guys and a 36-year-old. But if you can lock up Durant for 2 or 3 years to kind of be the bridge between this version of Wemby and whatever his peak is in 3 or 4 years,
I don't know. Just trading for a big star like that is not really the MO of the Spurs. I think like the closest thing they got into that in the last 20 years was LaMarcus Aldridge.
No, but I mean, it is kind of a unique situation with Wemby. Obviously, like Tim Duncan got drafted to a team that already had David Robertson, right?
Yeah.
With Wemby, you have a very clear like future MVP candidate.
Yeah.
They just traded for Fox, who is a pretty big star in his own right. Like, they've already made one pretty sizable trade for an all-star. Durant is like the perfect fit for those two guys.
So
he's the big volume shooter. Like, he's really what they need in a third star.
And here's the thing: if they trade back with us to move back one spot, they can give the Suns whatever we give them to.
That's a great point.
Mm-hmm. But still, if I'm Phoenix, I just see Houston, and I'm like, you can give me some veterans, you can give me some young players, you can give me my picks back. The picks back is like the biggest thing for me.
Counter pitch. You trade back to 3, and either you can put Edgecombe, who's another really high level defender who can cut and dunk and do all the small stuff next to Durant, Fox, and Wemby, or you like let Ace Bailey learn from Kevin Durant for 3 or 4 years, which might be cool. That's like probably the ideal setup for him from like a mentorship perspective. Kevin Durant likes Ace Bailey. I don't know if we've like heard it. He does.
He's every player that's following the draft. Every player is fawning over Ace Bailey. Yeah, which is maybe the Sixers should listen to, but who knows?
I think anyone calling Ace Bailey Kevin Durant is like way overselling it. But
I mean, Paul George loves him too. But
it's like a great person to learn from if you have Ace Bailey's skill set. So
yeah. So I mean, that's a good counterpoint. That's a good counterpoint. I think it does what you want to do in the draft because, like, I guess Durant's a 4 now, right? Like, can we just agree that he's a full-time 4 now? He's not going to play 3 ever again.
Yeah, sure.
Because, like, okay, like the trade, like, how do you get to Durant to Phoenix? I mean, to San Antonio, right? You're gonna have to give up your best shooter and Devin Vassell, right?
Yeah. But you're adding a better shooter.
Yeah, you are. You're gonna have to trade probably Jeremy Sohan, right?
Sure, that's fine. I don't think Sohan's a long-term guy there.
I'm trying to think of who else. Like, what other contracts? I'm
I
not
think
trying to get
Harrison
on
Barnes is like the filler piece.
Harrison Barnes. Yeah, so you would have to trade those 3 guys, right?
Yeah,
To
pick
get to.
14, 2 or 3 future firsts, and I think you're there. I think
I
that's a
think
good
2
package
future
for both
first gets
teams.
it done. But like I said, like all that's nice, but like I like the prospects on Houston better, to be honest. And I like the picks from Houston better, honestly.
Yeah. I
So
mean, like
like
I don't think you're gonna get Amin Thompson or Alperen Şengün.
no, you're not getting them. You
So
might be able to reroute Jalen Green to a third team to get either additional picks or players, right?
maybe but I don't know how high Jalen Green's value is right now.
Yeah.
I think best case scenario, you're getting Reed Shepherd, who is an objectively awesome like prospect and could be really fun next to Devin Booker for the next
Reed Shepherd,
5
Cam
years.
Whitmore,
Or Jabari Smith. You could probably
Jabari
get all
Smith.
those guys, or at least
Yeah,
2 of
you're
those
definitely
guys.
getting Jabari Smith in that deal.
Yeah. But is
Yeah.
that so much better than Sohan Vassell in pick 14?
Maybe not the prospects, but the picks are. Because you get your own picks back. Chris, that's the thing.
Vassell might be the best player of that group that we just mentioned.
He might,
on
but
day
like, is
one.
Phoenix really going to be winning? No, they're not. Let's be
They're
clear.
going to try to win. Like
They're going
Phoenix
to
is
try to
clearly
win, but like, let's be
oriented.
clear. You're not gonna in the West. You're not gonna be able to win. You're not with that roster. Not with those players. I say you load up on the young talent, develop it. Devin Booker doesn't look like he's going anywhere. Bradley Beal, for better or worse, is not going anywhere.
But like Vassell is not old. He's on the same
No, I'm
timeline
not saying
as
Vassell's old. He's not even hit his prime yet. I'm not saying that.
I think Sohan in Phoenix is probably looks a lot better than he does in San Antonio. I think it's a better fit. They have more shooting.
They still need a center in Phoenix.
You do, but you're not really getting one from Houston after the Steven Adams extension.
No,
you're not going to get
that
one
would have
from
been
Miami.
an ideal trade, honestly.
Unless you get Khalil Ware, which I don't think he like moves the needle for me that much.
Yeah, and Spurs don't have a center of the trade because their other 2 backups are free agents.
Yeah, the Rudy Gobert thing with Minnesota made sense, but they can't really do that trade until July because of the apron. So I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think Spurs make a lot of sense too. I think it will be the Spurs or the Rockets. I don't think the Heat are going to get it done.
Probably not, but I'm going to lean towards Houston just because like they have the Suns picks. Like that's if I'm a GM, I want my picks back if I am not competing for a championship. And I know what the owner said, but let's be real. We're not competing for a championship.
I agree. I think if you can get your own picks back, that moves the needle, and I think you do that trade.
Yeah.
So,
though I would be interested to see what the Raptors can do. I don't really think the Clippers can do anything or should do anything.
Yeah, no. I would agree with
Clippers
that.
just need to actually show up in the playoffs. That's what they need to do.
I think you can make the case that the Clippers should be trying to trade Kawhi and James Harden this summer and blow it up, but they're not going to do that.
They just got a new arena. They can't.
Yeah, Toronto is an interesting one. Like honestly, I think that would be a really good team. Like if you can put Barnes and Durant and Ingram together, that's a really interesting combination.
Well, and like I said, if the Thunder end up losing the NBA Finals 2-2, anything could happen. Like do you reunite, bring him back home for the last stretch of his career, and have him compete with? Because let's be real, if he got to OKC, and you'd probably have to give up Jay Will and some picks, some J Dub and some picks, and then
I'm not doing that though.
You're not doing that?
Too good. J Dub's too good.
Too inconsistent offensively in the finals.
He's had an awesome finals. Like I don't think you do that. I don't think you're giving up Chet or J Dub, and that makes it hard. They have the pieces and the picks, but I just don't know if it works.
Well,
but
we'll see. Well, this is that. You know what? Great segue.
Let's go around the NBA.
Yeah. So NBA Finals, Chris. I said 6 games. I think you also said 5 or 6 games. It looks like it's going to be at least 6, probably 7. Do you still feel good about the Thunder's chances here?
I don't know. I agree that this feels like a 7-game series.
Mm-hmm. Look,
Um,
I honestly think if the Pacers would have won last night, they would have it would have been all but sealed. Oh, if the OKC
100%.
kept their chances alive.
Yeah, that was a huge win. I agree. The series would have been practically over if Indy had gone
Yeah.
up 3-1.
Shout out to Obi Toppin looking like he's like a top 10 pick like he was supposed to, right? TJ McConnell, shout out TJ. Got it, man. We got to make sure TJ gets it, right? We got to make sure TJ gets it for all Sixers fans. If he gets it, he's going to get like a street name for him or a sub name for him or something like that in Philly, right? It has to happen.
Yeah,
McConnell.
I would feel very good if TJ got a ring.
Is he the only Sixer? The only former Sixer in the finals right now?
Isaiah Joe.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I would just feel better about TJ though.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think OKC is still the better team on paper, and
on paper, yes, but they have not been.
If it's Game 7 at home in OKC with that crowd, I think you're still probably gonna have to pick the Thunder.
Yeah, I think that's fair, but like, you know,
Indy's depth pieces have been playing a lot better than OKC's depth pieces. I think like matchup wise, like Rick Carlisle has put Mark Daigneault in like a locker.
Chokehold.
Like it's
the only thing that Mark Daigneault did at the end of Game 4 was force the Pacers to switch Aaron Nesmith onto Shea, and that has been the only reprieve that Shea has got. Because Nembhard has been absolutely like locking him. Obviously he's still getting his buckets, but he's making it very, very, very almost impossible for him.
Yeah, Shea had like a really rough game until he just like blew up in the last 3 minutes and won the game.
Well, that's because
credit to him for persevering, but
here's the thing though, like in order for him to do that, they had to basically take the ball out of his hands for the first 3.5 quarters. So that he wasn't tired out at the end of the game. And does that work multiple games? Probably not, because Carlisle's freaking smart. So I don't know, man. We'll see.
Yeah, it's tough. It's a really interesting series. The Pacers feel like they have like that Team of Destiny vibe.
They do, don't they?
That Game 4 loss was rough, though. That was like a brutal way to end that. That felt like a real crushing blow.
But I don't think it is. I don't think that has completely crushed everything for the Pacers.
I agree. I don't think it's completely crushed, but it has definitely like propped the door open.
They need to win Game 5. They need to win Game 5
in
order to have a fighting chance here.
Like OKC is a really like a historically good team, as we've talked about, and leaving the door open for them is just not ideal. You really wanted to just put your foot on their throat, but
yeah. Well, we'll see what happens because Chet and J Dub both had some scary instances in Game 4. So Chet with the twisted ankle, who knows how he's going to feel on Monday. J Dub had at least 1 or 2 hard falls. Who knows how he's going to feel on Monday?
That's a good point. Yeah. I don't know. What's your pick, Lucas? What's your prediction here?
My prediction? Oh gosh. I kind of want to go with the Team of Destiny feel. I'm gonna go Pacers 7. I think the Pacers are not gonna win if it gets to Game 7, so it has to be Pacers in 6. That's what I think has to happen. They have to steal another one on the road, and then they have to close out on their home court. That's what has to happen.
Yeah,
because they're not gonna win Game 7 in OKC. That's just not gonna happen.
Yeah, I think Indy has been the better team so far.
They've been playing better overall.
They have the better offense, and frankly, their defense is like really
just as good.
Put OKC in some tough spots.
Yeah.
I don't hate it. I might even say Indy in 7. Like I think the Pacers have the poise and the clutch.
They might. Look. Anything's possible here.
I might go Indy in 7. Honestly, I think they can win that game on the road.
You mean you're not going to go with your Thunder?
I don't know. I'm just going off how the vibes right now.
The vibes are right now Indy in 7. Okay.
Yeah,
that is That is wild. That is wild right there. Okay. I'm trying to think of anything else around the NBA. Expansion's still on the table, from what I understand. We just talked about the Steven Adams extension. Good for him. We talked about KD. Let's talk about the Knicks and how like you fire your head coach. Okay, like I don't even think last time we did a pod, Nick. I think Tom Thibodeau just got fired, right?
Yeah, I think it was just me and Michael, right?
I don't even remember, but I do remember like so. Tibbs fired. Okay, I get it. I wouldn't have done it, but I get it.
Yeah.
And like your first 7 calls, and I literally do means I believe it was 7, like 6 to 7 head coaches. You call Finch, you call Kidd, you call who else? Billy Donovan, who should have been your first call if you're going to call a head coach,
Yeah.
right?
Quinn
Because
Snyder.
Billy Donovan should have been like Billy Donovan would want out of that. But he didn't. But I'm just saying
Well,
he would
no,
have
it's
been.
not that he didn't. It's that the Bulls didn't. They just
Which
didn't
is
know.
crazy work.
Which like they have the right. He's done a great job in Chicago.
Who else? Who else did they call?
They called Quinn Snyder.
Quinn Snyder.
Good
I don't
coach. I understand it. Who else did they call? We're missing a big one here. It was Kidd, it was Finch, and it was Udoka.
Udoka, yeah. Udoka, come on now. So
yeah.
no.
Tough
so,
luck.
so look, you're getting guys that are clearly better than Tom Thibodeau, but like these guys all have jobs and jobs for a good reason, right? So then I think they just reported today or yesterday that they're going to talk to 2 guys. I think Mark Jackson is actually on the list, right? No, who
I don't
are the
know.
2?
If he is, that's bad. That's not
Hang
good.
on, there were 2 guys that they're gonna hang on. Shams tweeted it. Give me a second here.
Yeah, Mark Jackson would be a pretty catastrophically bad hire, in my opinion.
Taylor Jenkins and Mike Brown.
Okay, yeah, that's good.
Taylor Jenkins, I get that one. Okay, that's
sense.
fine.
I think Mike Brown would make a lot of sense too.
I think, I
remain
don't
on
think
the Mike Brown train.
Yeah, I don't hate Mike Brown. I don't know if he's an upgrade over Tom Thibodeau, but I get the looking
That's
at him.
the thing. Is like Tibbs is definitely a flawed coach, and I think you could point to real issues with how he used Cat offensively.
Mm-hmm.
The defensive execution was not what you would expect from a team with so many good defenders and with a coach who has like built his reputation around defense.
You do have your 2 best offensive players or defensive liabilities, though. Some of the worst at their positions. So, like,
that's true. And also, you were in the conference finals, which is hard to do. And it's for the first time in like 25 years, right?
And like, look, Tibbs has gotten that team better almost every single year. So, like, I would not have done it. I would not. That is a James Dolan move, and it's probably because the role players like Mikal Bridges, OG, Josh Hart, like those type of guys probably complained.
I think it was like a real risk. It could go both ways. If you hire the right guy, I definitely think you can take this team to another level.
I think Taylor Jenkins, out of the 2 guys that we just mentioned here, I think there are other guys. You talk about Sam Cassell. I think
the thing is, like, one of the big complaints was that they just kind of stopped running the Brunson Cat pick and roll halfway through the season.
Mm-hmm.
That's like exactly what happened in Minnesota with Morant and Edey, is they just went away from the obvious beneficial offensive like linchpin.
So maybe not Jenkins there. Was that Jenkins, or was that the front office trying to get into everything?
I don't know. I guess we don't know, but
yeah, we don't know that one because they were trying to control his scheme from the front office. Let's be clear on that. I say Sam Cassell should also get a look here. I think Sam Cassell has paid his dues. He's a player's coach, kind of like Ty Lue a little bit. We'll see. I think
they should trade a first round pick for Nick Nurse.
I mean, look, I'm not going to complain. Bring in Sam Cassell. Jay Will from ESPN also mentioned Rajon Rondo. I don't hate that.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to fire Tibbs for a first timer.
I mean, I
Too
get
much
that, but
risk
you
there.
that's where you're at this point. Either what you call like Mike
Well,
D'Antoni to come back. Come on now.
difference between a first time an assistant who's been in the league for 20 years and a guy who's never coached.
Okay, fair enough.
I don't want to hire a guy who's never coached. I think that's too big a risk, right?
Well, I mean, I'm not bringing in Steve Nash either,
No.
or what's his name, Fizdale. I'm not bringing in him
Yeah.
either.
I think
Well,
Sam
would you
Cassell.
consider some of the guys that just got fired from Phoenix? You know, Frank Vogel, defensive oriented
Sure.
coach. You could do,
I could.
one championship, or even what's his name that just got fired, Budenholzer.
Yeah.
Though I see Budenholzer more of a just different types of Tibbs, but still Tibbs.
Yeah, I think Vogel and Bud both have some Tibbs qualities.
I
Those would
think
be fine
Vogel's
hires.
more malleable than Tibbs, though.
I think both are probably. I think those would both be good, solid hires with
Yeah,
high floors to a certain extent. I
yeah.
think Cassell makes a lot of sense. I would call Chris Quinn in Miami
Chris
and
Quinn
see what's
always
up
gets
there.
called. Johnny O'Brien, he's been linked to them too, unofficially.
Yeah.
Phoenix. Can we talk about I cover Phoenix for a year, so they always have a soft spot of heart, place in my heart, and I just feel like the new ownership, Matt Bish, he is quickly becoming. You know who he reminds me of ownership wise, and this isn't even an NBA comp. He reminds me of Dan Snyder. He really does. Make the big move. Make the big move. Oh, I'm going to hire my friends. Oh, we're having HR problems again and again. He's the
Yeah.
Dan Quinn, and this can be a hot take. I don't care. Let it be heard. Matt Ishbia is quickly becoming the Dan Quinn, not Dan Quinn, sorry, Dan Snyder of NBA ownership.
Yeah, I would say that report about him, the comment that he gave about saying he's going to take a more central role in
No, it
decisions
wasn't a
because the
comment. He sent out a
standard.
letter to
Yeah,
fans.
the idea that the normal structure here isn't working, so I'm going to take my.
I'm going to
That
hire
shows a pretty
the
severe.
assistant coach that I played for at Michigan State as the GM, who has no GM experience or front office experience whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And then this Ott guy. I don't even know who this Ott guy is. What is his name? I don't. The new head coach.
It's Jordan Ott, right?
Yeah, I don't know who he is. His wife's
Look,
name is also Jordan. That's the only other thing that I know about him.
Cleveland was a really good team last year. Hiring assistants from good teams makes sense. Also, a Michigan State guy. I'm sure there's no
No
correlation.
connection.
Be that as it may, anytime an owner is taking an outsized role in personnel decisions, it goes poorly. It never works out well. You need to leave it to the experts. The
Unless your
reason
name
it
is
hasn't
Mark
worked so far
Cuban,
is that he hasn't actually been leaving it to the experts. The idea that he hasn't been taking
James Jones is a good GM. He got a team to the NBA Finals out of
yeah,
the scrap heap.
Ishbia has been making. He made the Durant trade. Ishbia has been making all these moves. Him saying that he hasn't and that now he is taking a more front and center role is ridiculous because he has already had that role pretty openly.
Like I said, he's the Dan Snyder of the NBA. He's quickly becoming the Dan
Yeah.
Snyder of the NBA. Like I
I would
said,
not feel great about things if I was a Phoenix fan.
I wouldn't either. That's why I say if I'm Phoenix, I'm trying to get their picks back. But who knows? Matt Ishbia might just trade him again for the next big shiny toy, right? Not to refer to players as toys, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is what Phoenix should do and what they will do are probably different things, unfortunately. So
I could see Phoenix purposely trying to screw Durant and just sending him to the worst possible situation too.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like they're gonna play nice. They're obviously consulting with Durant's agent. I think the fact that Durant played nice after learning he was about to be traded mid-season behind his back was probably a gesture that should be reciprocated to a certain extent. But yeah, we'll see what happens. Phoenix is in a tough spot. There's really no other way to put it. They need to nail this trade. I'm not sure they will, but
We'll see.
we'll see.
But on that note, let's go ahead and wrap things up.
Yeah. As always, everyone, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Sixer Sense podcast. Please like, subscribe, follow along if you can. We are on Spotify, Apple, and on YouTube. Again, hit that subscribe button. And until next time, go Sixers. You can follow us on Twitter at SixerSense. I'm at Kline NBA. Lucas is at CoachDay_20. And we will be back soon.
Deuces.